G'day gamers, Gob here. Welcome back to Gob's Quickies. Now today there's something I've been dying to talk to you about, and I'll absolutely die if I don't get a chance to tell you. What we're going to talk about today is dye. All those wonderful things that you can use to add a little bit of colour and sparkle to your game. So let's go have a talk. The first thing we need to talk about and understand when we're talking about dyes is that there are three different categories of dyes. We have primary dyes, which are those where the colours are made from resources that you can find in the Minecraft world. There are quasi categories, and those ones can be also made from resources that you can find or can be made from the primary colours, and secondary colours which are only made from the primary colours. Okay, so our primaries is our red, yellow, green, black, brown, blue and white. Our quasi-primary, orange, light blue, magenta, pink, light grey, and our lime. And our secondary is our cyan, our purple, and our grey. Okay, so what makes dye so fascinating and so handy? Well, we can use dye to colour a number of items. We can colour beds, we can colour leather armour, banners. Okay, we can use them in banner patterns to make all those wonderful snazzy things that you can do. You can use dye to colour your glass, so you can have different coloured panes or different coloured glass blocks. You can use it on our shulkers. We can use it on our fireworks stars. We can use it on our terracotta and our concrete powder, on wool, and also to put colour in to the writing on our signs. Okay, and it's a very simple thing for signs and for sheep. For our wool, all we have to do is walk up to the sheep. Where is the green sheep? Where is the green sheep? There he is. Clicked on the green sheep. Okay, and if you're going to be using bulk wool for builds and things like that, it's much better to dye your sheep with one piece of dye and then collect as much wool as you like of that colour than having to individually colour each piece of wool, because that then will require a piece of dye for each piece. Right, okay, so let's talk about where we get the different colours from. Okay, we'll start with red. Okay, now some dyes we will use, we can create on a crafting interface, and some are done through furnaces. Okay, and red is done in a crafting interface, and there are three flowers that we can use to create red dye and beetroot. Okay, so we've got the rose bushes, we have poppies, and we have our red tulips. And if we find any of these, we can go to our crafting bench, go to the interface, and that will make red dye. We can also use beetroot, again onto the crafting bench, to get red dye. Green dye. Now green dye is one of those ones that you need a furnace for, and it is made from cactus. Okay, so place your cactus in a furnace, cook her up, and you'll get your green dye. Purple dye. Okay, this is one of our secondary colours. You can only make it by combining our other colours, and we make purple dye from red dye and blue dye in the crafting interface. Cyan dye, again another one of these secondary colours. Okay, you create cyan dye on a crafting interface using blue and green. Now one of my favourite colours is light grey for glass. Okay, and there are three different plants that you can use in a crafting bench to create light grey. You've got the azure bluet, you've got the oxide daisy, and a white tulip. Okay, and that will get you your light grey. You can also make light grey using black dye and 2 white dye. Okay, on a crafting interface. Okay, grey dye. One of those ones that is a secondary colour, has to be created from 2 primaries, and it's made from a black dye and a white dye on a crafting interface. Pink dye can be created from peonies in a crafting bench, or pink tulips in a crafting bench to get you a pink dye, or we can combine red dye and white dye to get pink. Now, lime dye has two methods of getting it. We can get a sea pickle, whack it in a furnace, give it a cook, and we get our lime dye. Or we can get a green dye and a white dye, put it into a crafting bench and combine it to get our lime. Yellow dye is a primary. It's obtained through sunflowers in a crafting bench, or daffodils in a crafting bench. Light blue we can make through a blue orchid in a crafting bench to get the dye, or we can combine blue dye and white dye on a crafting bench to get it. With magenta we can find lilac, or we can find alum and put one of these into the crafting bench to get our dye, or we can combine our purple with our pink to get magenta. Another option to make magenta is combine one blue, one white and two reds in your crafting bench, and you'll get your magenta dye. Now, orange dye you can make by finding an orange tulip and putting it in your crafting bench, or you can combine red and yellow to get your dye. Blue dye you can find a cornflower and put it in your crafting bench, or you can get some lapis and put it in your crafting bench and you'll get the blue dye. Brown dye is only one source, and that's our cocoa beans. Okay, so put your cocoa beans into the crafting interface and you'll get your brown dye. Black dyes have two sources. You can find a wither rose, put it into your crafting bench and you'll get your dye, or you get a ink sac from a squid and put it in your crafting bench to get the dye. And your white dye, you can find lily of the valley, put it in your crafting bench to get the dye, or bone meal into your crafting bench to make the dye. And that's how you source all 16 colours to make them. Now there is another way that you can get dye. You can go to Dodgy Bob here. Okay, yes, I'm talking about you, Bob. Yep, and if you've got some dyes, he might, on occasion, depending on which Dodgy Bob you find, he may actually sell dyes for an emerald. Okay, but that's not always the case, and what colour is really a potluck situation. And then we've got his mate here. Okay, we got Shepherd Bob. Okay, now Shepherd Bob will actually buy dyes. Okay, so if you've got an excess of dyes and you've got a trading hall and you've got a Shepherd Bob in your trading hall, you can offload your dyes to him, get your emeralds, until Dodgy Bob comes around and sells you some dodgy looking things using those emeralds. So there you go. That's a quick down and dirty on all the different types of dyes in the Minecraft world, all 16 of them. Okay, so use them, add a little bit of colour, get some coloured glass, get some coloured concrete, colour your armour, your sheep, all that sort of stuff. Happy days. If you liked this video, please give it a like. Don't forget to chuck us a comment. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. You can see all the rest of my content when it comes out. And if you're not one of my patrons, do go and give it a bit of a gander. If you're a patron, you'll get recognition on all my videos. You'll get a memento in the Trycraft patron hall, and better yet, you'll get to play on the Trycraft patron server with myself and the other Trycrafters, and you'll get to play Acid Island and Skyblock and have a whale of a time. But that's all I've got time for today. Until next time, hooroo!